Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of FFB from the 50, where we tackle every issue from both sides of the field. Brought to you by JDP Media. I'm your host, Dan Amsler, and guess what, folks? It is finally sweater weather. Week 3 is in the books. We get to look forward to Week 4, so here we go. We're going to start this week like we do every week with our 5 ups and 5 downs from the previous week. So, starting with our 5 ups, the first one from week 3 is Alexander Mattison. The reason that I chose him is because, once again, Dalvin Cook is dealing with an injury. Dalvin Cook ended up having a slight separation of his shoulder. It's an injury that he's had in the past. He's had these shoulder injuries crop up from time to time. Alexander Mattison went in last week against Detroit and looked pretty good and actually scored another touchdown. So Alexander Mattison is my first for up this week. Number 2 for stock up, Tony Pollard. This is now back-to-back weeks where Tony Pollard's had a really good game for the Dallas Cowboys. On Monday night, going against the Giants, he rushed for over 100 yards. Now, what's really interesting is he didn't catch a single pass. But to see that kind of usage in the run game and for him to get 100 running yards or 100 rushing yards is a good sign. Once they start using him more in the passing attack, his fantasy stock will continue to soar. All right, number 3, Jamal Williams for the Detroit Lions. If you were watching that game, I'm sure you saw that DeAndre Swift went down with another injury of his own. He came into the week battling an ankle injury and ended up spraining his shoulder during the game. Jamal Williams came in, rushed for 87 yards, had a total of 107 yards, and scored 2 touchdowns. Looks like DeAndre Swift might miss a couple weeks with his injury, so make sure you plug in Jamal Williams anywhere and everywhere you can. That Detroit Lions offense is now the second highest scoring offense in the NFL, and I will take any part of that I can get for fantasy purposes. Number 4, Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre was on our stock down list last week. He bounced back nicely this week, scoring over 20 points in fantasy football and PPR leagues. Ramondre Stevenson had over 100 total yards, scored a touchdown, and had 4 receptions. So his usage definitely is increasing, and he is starting to find his groove. Number 5, Khalil Herbert. Another running back who benefited from an injury. David Montgomery went down for the Bears with both knee and ankle injuries. So Khalil Herbert came in, rushed for this. Listen, folks. Rushed for over 150 yards, had over 179 total yards, and 2 touchdowns. Just imagine what he could have done if he had been in for the entire game. Not to mention the fact that the Bears are incredibly committed to the run game as they try to protect Justin Fields and figure out what they have there. Now, I don't know if David Montgomery is going to be back anytime soon, but going into this season, I thought Khalil Herbert was probably the superior talent in that backfield. He keeps putting up stat lines like this, it won't matter if David Montgomery is healthy. And, again, because it's my show and I can do this, I have a bonus 6th up for this week. Romeo Doubs for the Green Bay Packers. Romeo had 8 receptions for 73 yards and scored a touchdown against Tampa Bay for Green Bay. It looks like he may be starting to separate himself, and imagine if he could become Aaron Rodgers' number 1 target for Green Bay. All right, stock down. Starting with DeAndre Swift for the exact reasons we spoke about with Jamal Williams. DeAndre Swift is hurt. Again. This time he has multiple injuries. He's nursing an ankle injury from before and now is dealing with a shoulder injury. The head coach for the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, said that he might actually miss the next 2 weeks in order to get him healthy. The problem is Jamal Williams looked really good. Now DeAndre Swift's incredibly talented, but the man has a hard time staying on the field. Number 2, Dalvin Cook. Injury. Number 3, David Montgomery. Injury. You know, you can almost look at this list and say, okay, let's just put running backs on the stock down. But number 5, Justin Fields. So if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you're probably paying attention to these games and realizing that Justin Fields has yet to complete double-digit passes in any of his games. And bonus stock down, number 6, I'm going to throw in Jonathan Taylor. And the reason I'm throwing Jonathan Taylor in there has nothing to do with his talent. Jonathan Taylor is a fabulous running back, but so far through 3 games, it appears that his usage is very much going to be predicated upon the game script. I don't know why they don't give him the ball more, but that Indianapolis Colts offense seems to be sputtering. They did come away this week with the win against Kansas City, but Jonathan Taylor's numbers were down again. Indianapolis, figure out what you're doing with them. All right, here's some news, notes, and injuries that we need to be paying attention to going into Week 4. Starting off with those injuries to Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Swift, and David Montgomery. If those guys do end up missing time, make sure you do fire up Alexander Mattison for the Minnesota Vikings. Make sure you fire up Jamal Williams for the Detroit Lions. And make sure you fire up Khalil Herbert for the Chicago Bears. Another news, Sterling Shepard had a non-contact knee injury in Monday Night Football game against the Dallas Cowboys. It turns out that was indeed a torn ACL, and Sterling Shepard is out for the season. Amon-Ra St. Brown is fighting some nagging ankle injury that he received during the game against the Minnesota Vikings. It is not expected to be a long-term injury, but if you're watching Amon-Ra St. Brown and you have him on your fantasy team, make sure you're paying attention to those injury reports. An ankle injury to a wide receiver could actually end up affecting their game even if they're out there. They may not be nearly as effective if they can't make their cuts and can't get off the ball quickly. Mac Jones suffered a high ankle sprain that's considered severe. He could be out multiple games. Joey Bosa for the Chargers is out with a groin injury. Looks like he may miss multiple weeks with that injury. Jalen Guyton for the Chargers is out for the season with an ACL tear. And Joe Mixon got banged up in Cincinnati's game versus the New York Jets. However, it looks like he is going to suit up and play Thursday night this week. A couple offensive linemen that have injuries. Trent Williams for the 49ers is out 4 to 5 weeks with a high ankle sprain of his own. And Rashawn Slater is out for the season for the Chargers with a ruptured bicep tendon. All right. A couple other things to keep an eye on. Keenan Allen has returned to practice and is expected to suit up this week for the Chargers. Kenny Galladay was reportedly and rumored to be on the trade market for the New York Giants. We'll see if that's still the case with Sterling Shepard's injury or if they're going to end up keeping him. Zach Wilson is set to suit up for the New York Jets this week. So it looks like Joe Flacco is going to move back to the bench. So for fantasy purposes, this is one I really do want to talk about real quick. You know, we've got guys like Tyler Conklin and Garrett Wilson who have looked really, really well with Joe Flacco as the quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see if those guys are able to keep up their production or if a guy like Elijah Moore, who played very well with Zach Wilson last year, will step up and their role will diminish. Myles Garrett was in a car accident. So if you're still starting Cleveland's defense at this point, which would make you one of the very few who are, Jadeveon Clowney, still not sure if he's going to be back, and now Myles Garrett's out. Sounds like he avoided major injury, but he is dealing with some bumps and bruises, so we'll see if he's able to play. Another thing I want to talk about is we have our first game in London this week with the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Saints. Folks, do you know what that means? We literally have football all day long on Sunday. Another thing that I want us all to be watching for is Hurricane Ian. As that moves up into the United States from the Gulf Coast, it's supposed to slow down its forward progress. We need to make sure we're monitoring what games could be affected. If you have any home games with any of your fantasy football players on the Eastern Seaboard, make sure, or the Mid-Atlantic, make sure you're paying attention to the weather. We saw the drastic effect that it could have in Week 1 when the Bears took on the 49ers. All right. So this week, instead of giving you 3 games that I'm looking forward to, I have 3 questions that I'm asking myself. The first question is where do the Chargers go now? So we know that Justin Herbert is dealing with this injury to his rib cartilage. Rashawn Slater is now hurt and looks like he's going to miss the entire season with that ruptured bicep tendon. Jalen Guyton is out for the season with a torn ACL. And now we're losing Joey Bosa on the defensive side. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Chargers. They came in this year with high expectations, but now they're dealing with injuries on both sides of the field to very important players. The next question I have is how good can Buffalo's defense be? I was really looking forward to a shootout between Miami and Buffalo. We all knew that Buffalo was going to put up points. We assumed that Miami would too after the outburst they had against the Ravens. I really thought Miami was going to put up a lot of points on Buffalo because every single member of their secondary was a rookie. They were out, every single member. All of their starters were out last week, and they still kept the Miami Dolphins in check after that explosion that they had. Now, part of that may have been due to Tua's injury, but I'm just really intrigued to see where that defense can go from there. The other question that I'm asking myself now pertains to the fantasy football trade market. I want to know who is going to sell high on Antonio Gibson. So if you have Antonio Gibson, this might be the time to trade him to someone else. Ryan Robinson has returned to practice and is actually running, and this is crazy. He's only a few weeks removed from being shot, and he's already running. That's crazy. When he comes back, he could drastically cut into Antonio Gibson's workload, and if Antonio Gibson loses those touches, he's going to lose his fantasy football production. So if you have Antonio Gibson, now's the time to trade him while his stock is high. Conversely, if you have Kyler Murray, hold on to him. I've already heard trade rumors in a couple of my fantasy leagues where Kyler Murray is on the trade market because he hasn't played well this year. But let's keep in mind, they lost Christian Kirk due to an off-season trade or free agency. A.J. Green has just not been playing and needs to retire, just being honest. DeAndre Hopkins is suspended for the first 6 weeks, and Rondale Moore has not suited up. So right now, Kyler Murray's not working with a whole lot of weapons. Both Hopkins and Rondale Moore are going to come back. James Conner was also playing banged up last week too. So if you have Kyler Murray, hang on to him. If you're thinking about trading for him, this is the time to do it, because once his weapons come back, he's going to be productive again. Get him now while you still can. All right, folks, that's it for this week. If you could, go down into the comment section. Let me know whose fantasy stocks you think are up and whose stock is down after week 3. Also, if there are any games that you're looking forward to this week, go down to the comment section, tell me which games those are and why. All right, folks, until next time, take care. We'll see ya.